think that gives a good opportunity to go back into the book and look at just even in the first couple chapters, and the chapters are super short, but some of the things that he says on the negative side of warfare. So in chapter 2, Waging War, he says, when employing the people in battle, a victory that is long in coming will blunt their weapons and dampen their ardor, right? So too long of a campaign is not good. If you expose the army to a prolonged campaign, the state's resources will be inadequate. Okay, you're going to run out of the ability. He talks about how tensions will rise and feudal lords will lose control of their citizens. Even if you have wise generals, they will not be able to achieve a good result. He says, I have heard of awkward speed, but have never seen any skill in lengthy campaigns. No country has ever profited from protracted warfare. And that's a pretty dramatic statement. And there's a bunch of that peppered throughout. And the conclusion that he comes to, sort of building on that, is that the attaining 100 victories in 100 battles is not the pinnacle of excellence. Subjugating the enemy's army without fighting is the true pinnacle of excellence. Excellence. Thus, the highest realization of warfare is to attack the enemy's plans. Next is to attack their alliances. And only after that, their army. So that was from chapter 3. But you can kind of see how there's this negative view of war and especially prolonged war campaigns, and that those are always going to deplete the society. Um, And there's a bunch on that in just the beginning of the book. And I think that's really relevant to today because we find ourselves in a bunch of sequential long war campaigns and depleting our resources and upsetting the people, etc., and maybe losing the Tau. So I think that ties right in there.
Yeah, I mean, the main question is, what do we have to show for it? What do we have to show for the tens of thousands of lives that have been lost uh, for whose gain, right? And that makes perfect sense. Prolonged warfare is not beneficial at all.
You have to be able to export those or externalize those costs onto the state and then be a separate entity that gets the benefits without paying for the um, external costs.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we look at anything, let's say in the United States past World War II, essentially every conflict has resulted in that type of a campaign, prolonged, orchestrated not from the ground, generals on the ground, but orchestrated from an external source, whether it's Washington, D.C. or England or whichever war. It's not typically fought with the mind on the ground. You always got to go back to another form of command that doesn't know what the experience of the combat's like. And so there's that dissonance. Um, but that's exactly it. Like look, pulling out of Afghanistan the way that we did. How long was that war? Two decades. 2 decades. And again, what to be shown for it? And you see the patterns of on the surface, it was very abrupt. There was an action taken on 9/11, and then that opened the floodgates for the next 20 years. And so that specific action justified the following 20 years of quote unquote conquest or restabilization. Again, enforcing your will on another population and hoping that they say, hey, wait a minute, these guys got a clean cut, these guys got a clean beard, these guys are smiling, these are the good ones, let's be like them. That's always been it, right? That the one that subjugates another nation state, they're always expected to be the saviors. In their minds, they're coming in as the savior, but to the population that they're intending to save, they're viewed as the oppressor. And that seems to be a consistent pattern. So who benefits from these things? It's not the people. I mean, the value of the currency, the dwindling of resources, all of that stuff goes down when we engage in these activities. But those that really pulled the string, uh, they benefit. I read somewhere that during the Revolutionary War, that most of the members of parliament were on some degree benefiting as merchants from the war. So they had full skin in the game to keep it going. And that's what a lot of these people, I think of what was it, Dick Cheney with Halliburton, or a few of these other companies that were that, the people in charge making the decisions have a vested interest in a specific outcome of these conflicts. And that's why we continually to get into them. And so then that ties back to, well, are the people actually responsible for these wars? In a sense, yes, because you're so distorted and we're so distracted by conveniences and modes of satiation that we don't know what's going on, and we're so preoccupied with paying the next bill that we don't have time to even think about this stuff. So next thing you know, we're in another conflict.
Right.